Don't Starve is a survival game specifically designed to kill you. And I had an idea. What if I tried to make it as far as possible in this game without looking anything up? So I made my own world and I made my own character. And to keep things as simple as possible, I chose Wilson. And into the constant we went. Our first order of business was to explore and find basic supplies. Things like grass, food, sticks, rocks, flint, all so we can make our first item, the axe. This will allow us to chop down trees. We soon come across 2 tall birds, which got angry at me for existing. Kinda like my parents, but it turned out trying to steal from them doesn't really go too well. So off to a new world we went. In this world, we spawned right next to a biome in what I can only consider as part of the lore ranks. There was also a house here. I wonder if we'd see that individual later on. Behind the house was some shit, so I picked it up with my bare hands. Then promptly placed it in the middle of the path to stink off all the intruders. I came across this cocoon and tried to ransack its stump. It did not take kindly to this action. Then to make the once-lore proud, I chopped down some trees. I then found this marble sculpture and statue in the middle of the forest. This turned out to be completely useless. I came across to this lump that looks only like a rectum. Apparently jumping into holes with teeth is not very sane, but I beg to differ. It now begins to hit night time. Now would be a good time to explain that without a light in night time, you will just die. Thankfully we didn't, and we can move on to surviving day 2. We then enter a swampy area with a certain anime girl's wet dream. Our continued exploration landed us in this rock den. From the looks of it, if you gathered certain materials, you'd be able to make pets. Near this we found a touchstone. A touchstone is good because if we die it allows us to revive ourselves. So we set up base near here and build our science machine. This is basically the crafting table of Don't Starve and allows us to make new items and stuff. So I decided to make some cutstone and an electrical doodad. It then hit night time and we camped it out for the night. Now, on to day 3. This day was mostly spent collecting resources, and we built our new thing, the think tank. This tank seemed to allow us to build things related to sea, so boats and stuff like that. And so it hit night time. I'm fairly sure that we just barely managed to place that campfire down in time. Now, it was time for day 4. Day 4 gave us access to a new mechanic, Insight. This is an ability from our character Wilson, and we get to choose what to spend it on. I chose to spend it on one of the torch upgrades and settled on the one that makes torches last for longer. And so off we went adventuring and looking for more resources. I found this turkey and decided to chase it, but I was not able to catch it in the slightest. I then ran over to this pond, but the frogs didn't like me doing that. I tried to fight the frogs, but then a third one showed up, and I decided that I was not gonna die right here. I then came across this eye bone that was sticking out of the ground. As soon as I picked it up, something happened. Meet Chester. This guy is a living, breathing chest that I'm able to put items in, and as long as I have the eye bone, he follows me around. This is useful because I can go out exploring and store all the stuff I need in the chest so I can pick up more goodies. I then decided to follow this road forward and see where it would lead. I found this little marble thing, and upon picking it up it slows your character the hell down. Yeah, there's no way I was carrying that thing around me. However, we found a stage. This place looked incredibly suspicious, but I explored it anyway. Upon examining the playbook, we found out we were in the first scene of the play. I also dolled myself up. I then picked a flower. This turned out to be a mistake. I was now deep in shit. Because it was almost nighttime, however, I knew that the only thing I had the option of doing was fighting. Thanks to Chester taking 3 of the dogs aggro, I was able to take one out. I then used this to lure one at a time and slowly kill them. Somehow we had survived, but it was almost night. Thankfully, we had a torch, and the night isn't dangerous as long as there is a light source, so technically this means that it doesn't even have to be a campfire. I then came across this plugged sinkhole. Once it hit day, I decided to mine it and see what was underneath. There was a hole, and I decided to jump into it. It took me to this cavern-looking place, so I wandered around for a bit. The only new materials it seemed to have were ferns and those light bulb flower-looking things. I also found this rabbit house. Yeah, no shit, Wilson. Anyway, I found this carrot next to it. For some reason, I was allowed to spin it on the floor. Now, I didn't notice this while playing, but it actually points in a specific direction. However, me being a dumbass, I decided it would be best to just leave. I came across this stagehand table with some flowers that hurt me when I picked them up. Nearby was this hay area with shit and a beefalo, which basically acts as a cow. The next biome over was a forest, and it had this very suspicious, totally normal tree in the middle of it. Upon closer inspection, it looked like I could place objects inside of it for some reason. However, I didn't do that, so I left. I came across this spider den nearby, but I did not want to fuck around and find out. Nearby, I found what I could only consider as some sort of cult ritual. It turns out cultists don't like it when you're in their rituals. And it was hitting nighttime. Thankfully again, we had another torch. We survived the night and on to day 6. On this day, it started raining, so I tried to stick to the trees to get not as wet as I possibly could. Eventually I found another wormhole and decided to jump through it. I then found 2 killer beehives. They did not like me being there. And there was 2 more. And then I saw even more. Maybe this place wasn't the safest place I could have been. So I left and entered this rocky area with some ice on the floor. I then mined said ice, and I ate it. I then went back to find Chester because apparently I'd left him behind somewhere. However, Chester had guests. His guests didn't like him very much, and I also noticed this shadowy thing following me around. Upon leaving, I noticed that the basilisks were following Chester around, and it was nighttime. However, we made it back to our makeshift camp and managed to survive the night. I also might have just started a forest fire right next to where I lived. I then opened a box. The box gave me shoes. I also decided to build this beefalo bell since it said that would help me befriend a beef. Then put all my resources on the floor. I then used my insight point to make my second torch last longer. However, something was off. I guess it was nothing.
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
So it turns out, according to the wiki, hounds can attack players around every 3 to 13 days. I got lucky and they spawned on day 7. Upon killing them you get monster meat, but I had a new problem. I was super low on health, and I didn't know how to get it back. I tried eating monster meat to see if that would help. It did the opposite, and I did not know how to get my health back. So I left in search of a way and came across a graveyard. This ghost spawned, but it didn't seem to do anything harmful. Soon it was night and I built a campfire and decided to try and eat some food to see if I would gain my health back. This, however, didn't seem to do anything in terms of health recovery. And so on to day 8 we went. So you get the point, blah blah blah, collect resources. So let's skip to the night. I decided to craft this bedroll, which restores my sanity and some of my health. As for sanity, I have no idea how that mechanic works. I also cooked and ate some roasted carrots, which filled up my health back a bit. I then realized that I had nothing to fan the fire with, and it was almost night. Soon, it was dark. Luckily, the light bulb from the cave area I picked up was bright enough for me to survive being attacked from the shadow creatures. And so we made it to the 9th day. I came across this raccoon. For some reason I started beef with it. It ended up dropping a tail and some meat, which I then remembered that I wanted from that rock den from earlier. However, I still needed an additional ingredient to be able to adopt a pet. I then came across this marble area which I didn't know how to utilize properly, and then that was about the extent of my exploring, so I made it back to camp. At the camp during the night time I did some classic doom piling, and on to day 10 we went. On this day I headed out past the graveyard. I came across this weird grey spot which had a spider den and a clockwork knight in it. However, I just got hentied. So off we ran. All the way into these swamp guys. And guess what happened? That's right, we died. But we still had a touchstone back near our base. So I decided to make my way back and use it to revive myself. But notice the day timer. This will be important later. We do make it to our touchstone and revive ourselves, which I'll admit is a pretty cool animation. However, of course, the touchstone broke, so we couldn't use it again. And on top of that, I didn't have any of my items on me, because they all dropped when I died. Now you notice how I said a few seconds ago to take note of the timer in the top right corner. Well, it went dark, and I didn't have anything to light the fire with. I think you can guess what happened next. That's right, game over, and I had no way to revive myself. 10 days in, and I died to the darkness. 10 days was how long I could last and don't starve without looking anything up. And so, the run concludes.